Hello everyone, this is Sunny, and I'm coming to you with Rose Petals, an Eyeless Jack reader by Afflicted-Alibis. I'm going to be starting off with Chapter 2, The Man in the Blue Mask. Your car drove steadily down the road as you restlessly looked for your little brother. Hoping you didn't accidentally miss him, there was nothing but a few groups of teenage friends walking along the sidewalk together with what you could only assume was bags of party supplies and the occasional car that passed by. Where is he? You'd been searching for half an hour. There was no sign of Liam anywhere you looked, and the pit of your stomach was flooded with dread. The neon numbers on your car's clock read to be close to 9, and with each minute that passed, the more you worried you wouldn't find your brother. The neighborhood wasn't normally dangerous as far as you were aware, but with that killer in white running around, you were even more worried. Normally, you did not call the police when Liam ran off during a fight, as it never took long to find him, but tonight was turning out to be different. 10 more minutes. I'll look for 10 more, and then I'll call them. A dark figure on the sidewalk suddenly caught your eye, and it was a man clad in full black lying limp on his stomach on the sidewalk. Though it was difficult to tell from how far you were, you saw what thought to be blood pooling around him. As you pulled up closer, you realized you were right, and there was a trail that leading from the grass to him as if he was something else had dragged him there. You slowed your car to a stop beside him, unsure as to whether he was dead or alive. Part of you considered that it might be some sort of early Halloween prank. You scanned the area carefully for anything that might be suspicious, and as far as you were able to see, there was nothing or nobody else around. Cautiously, you slipped out of your car, your eyes trained on the man as you slowly approached him. Sir? You called out carefully. Are you alright? The man did not respond. Shit, you didn't think it was a trick. You knelt down next to the man and flipped him over, revealing the source of the blood. His left forearm had been punctured, bleeding profusely. There was also a dark blue featureless mask covering his face with a black liquid leaking from the eye holes. He also had on gray body paint. You hurriedly over to your car and opened up the back door before you returned to the man, who was unresponsive as you picked him up and dragged him over to your vehicle. You hoisted him up and into the back seat and then rummaged around until you found your medkit. Opening it up, and you wriggled the man's hoodie sleeve up until his wound was completely exposed. While you weren't a doctor by any means, you had received enough first aid training to, at the very least, do something. One of the last things you wanted to do was stop looking for your brother, but you weren't going to let a man bleed out on the sidewalk. Midway through patching him up, the man started to stir. You quickly stopped what you were doing as a groan emitted from the shifting man. The injured man sat up, realized you were there, and then scrambled back on the seats until his back was pressed against the other car door. You held up your hands in defense, straightening. Whoa, hey, take it easy, you're hurt, I'm only trying to help. The man didn't ease up or move from where he was, only staring at you behind the black eye holes of the mask. At that, you decided to continue to explain in hopes that it would do some good. You spoke carefully. Listen, I was driving around looking for my brother when I saw you bleeding out in the street, and I get it. I wouldn't want to wake up in a stranger's car with them standing over me either, okay? But look, you gestured to the medical supplies. I really am just trying to help. You've got a serious wound on your arm. His breathing was heavy and further emphasized by the way it bellowed against the inside of his mask. You noticed his shoulder loosen up. Progress, I guess, you thought. Look, I hate to ask why you're bleeding all over my car seats here, but have you seen a little boy run by at all? Alone, 9 years old? He nodded. Your eyes lit up. Really? Really? How long ago? He shrugged, and you noticed he wasn't much of a talker. You did your best to keep patient now that you knew your brother was around and forced a pleasant tone. Okay, that's alright. You can help me look for him in repayment for me fixing you, okay? The man shook his head. I don't have time, you snapped. Turns you weren't good at keeping patient even when you tried. You're going to help me. Do you seriously just want some kid to get lost and hurt out there? Maybe I should leave you to bleed. How would you like that? At the spontaneous turnaround of your demeanor, he let his head drop back and hit the car window as he slumped in defeat, sighing. Good. Thank you. While dragging a stranger along in your car was not a nice thought, he was indebted to you, and the injury on his arm could weaken him a bit. Besides, even if he tried, you always kept a knife tucked underneath the driver's seat. Once you finished fixing his wound to the best of your ability, you put away your med kit and got back in the driver's seat, not minding that he sat in the passenger seat. Besides, it would be easier to keep an eye on him next to you as opposed to behind. He pointed you in the direction you had seen Liam run off in, and you drove that way. The car ride was silent, though you didn't mind. It was peaceful and allowed you to concentrate on your surroundings. You were less worried than before now that you knew you were heading in the right direction. Several minutes of driving passed before you came up on the forest that bordered your neighborhood. Even looking at it made you feel uneasy. You wished you could remember everything that happened at the campsite all those years ago, but nobody believed you or Iris when you tried to tell people what attacked your parents. The car jolted to a stop and you spotted your brother's shoe lying on the grass at the edge of the forest, and your grip on the steering wheel tightened. No, you would not lose another family member to the forest. Your hand flew to open your door as you scrambled to exit a vehicle, and to your surprise, the man grabbed your arm with both hands and yanked you back. Hey, what the hell? You yelled. Let me go, asshole. He didn't comply and strengthened his hold, pulling you back enough to have the car door close back shut from your grip on the handle. You stopped struggling, whirling on him. What? You could only guess it was something about the forest. Scared of the dark? The injured man released your arm and began to dig around the front of your car. You scoffed. Stop, what are you looking for? His hands fluttered about it for a moment, as if he were deciding on how to communicate his answer, and before he motioned the act of writing with his hands. Okay, he sighed. He did not want to have time for anything he was having an issue with, but clearly it was important enough to stop you, so you didn't want to ignore him. You gestured for him to move aside and reached across the car past him to the compartment on the dash, opening it. You fished out a small notepad and pen before handing it to him. He took it and began hastily scribbling down words. Once he finished, he lowered and angled it for you to read. You turned on the light above you. His handwriting was incredibly messy, but nonetheless you were able to make out what he said. He's already gone if he's in there. You clenched your teeth and looked at him, thinking about your parents. Not again. What's your problem? He wrote again. You're endangering yourself, too, by going in there. Whatever, you muttered. No matter what this guy said, you weren't going to abandon your brother to that forest. I'm going to get him no matter what. He stared at you for a long moment before shaking his head to himself and writing more. Then let me go with you. You weren't sure why this guy was suddenly so concerned for your safety when he wasn't exactly willing to help you find your brother to begin with, but you suppose that hardly mattered at that point. An extra pair of eyes would help, and if you got lost too, perhaps he could be useful there as well. You sighed. Fine, let's go. You killed the engine to your car and tucked your keys in your pocket before slipping your knife out from under the front seat, putting it away as well. You picked up a pair of flashlights, taking one for yourself and offering the other to your company. He stared for a moment before he reluctantly took it, as if he were unsure as to whether or not he would need it. You thought it to be a little weird, but you didn't question it further. You looked at his bandaged wound. He seemed to be more conscious and was moving around better than before, so you figured the wound wasn't bothering him too much. The both of you trudged into the woods. You refused to take your time, your pace quick with urgency. This, however, did not last long, as the man lagging behind a bit, getting caught in shrubbery and brushing up against trees. He must have been a lot more affected by the wound than you had initially thought. You slowed down until you were beside him and took his arm under yours. You sure you're up for this? You asked, and he nodded. You weren't positive about the answer, but pressed on regardless. The forest was a hair away from being pitch black, and both of your flashlights hardly cut through it with their light. The sound of crickets followed you everywhere you went on as you continued your search with a mysterious search partner. Your heart hammered in your chest, sweat rolling down the side of your face and inching your skin. You had a hard time telling how the man beside you felt, but you could only imagine he was sweating bullets behind that mask. It could not have been any good for this wound. Eventually you slowed to a stop, forcing him to do the same. Hey. Your quiet voice had a gentle quiver to it. Neither of you had spoken in a while. What if he isn't in here? What if his shoe just fell out next to the forest and he just kept running down the sidewalk? The man forced himself to stand straight, to slip the notepad and pen you gave him out of his hoodie pocket. You waited for him to write as you caught your breath, and he flipped the notepad around and shined your flashlight on it. He'll be in here. You narrowed your eyes at him. How do you know? More scribbling. I can feel it. He was beginning to get on your nerves, again. Aren't you the one who was trying to get me to not go in the stupid forest? How come you didn't feel it then, huh? You said. What sounded like a scoff sounded from him, and he went to write again, but froze before he could start. It reminded you of a dog perking its ears at a sudden noise. His head snapped to look over in a certain direction, and he lowered his notepad and lifted his flashlight, shining it in the direction he stared in. He flicked the light off and then back on twice, that way. You dropped whatever both of you were talking about and took off. Whatever he heard that you hadn't, it had to be your brother. Though in case it wasn't, you slipped out your knife and held it at the ready. You shoved your way through the undergrowth, hoping you didn't trip in the darkness. Your search partner was right behind you, all but struggling more than you were to quickly move. Familiar sobs came within hearing distance, and this only prompted you to go faster. Breaking through the undergrowth, your flashlight shone across a tiny clearing where your little Liam crouched down in the grass. His head whipped in your direction, the trails of tears on his face glowing in the light as he got closer. You lunged at him, scooping him up. His tiny arms were around you in an instant, squeezing you as tightly as he could. Through his sobs, he apologized over and over again, and you cradled him. You told him to never run away again and asked him why he ran off into the trees. He could barely muster out that he only felt compelled to, that he had not really known why. Your search partner caught up a moment later, frightening your brother. You told Liam it was alright and that the man helped you find him, and the masked man lingered off to the side. At that point, you didn't find his awkward behavior anything to mind and left him to be. It took some time, but eventually all three of you retraced your steps and escaped the confines of the forest. You carried your half-asleep brother to the car, your entire body aching. You thanked the man for what he did, as you would never have found your brother without him. And you offered to drive him to the hospital to get his arm taken care of, but he wrote he had it handled and that you should take your brother home. As much as he pissed you off before, you didn't think he was all that bad in the end. While you were at it, you even asked for the man's name, and in messy handwriting he said, Jack. Jack. Strangely, it fit the mysterious man. You returned your things, and you set your brother down in the passenger seat before you got in the car, starting it up. You waved Jack goodbye and took off down the road. Now, all you had to do was return home and give your uncle a good chewing out. That is the end of that chapter. Chapter 3 is called Intrigue. Let me know what you guys think about this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!